All right, and time now for our newspaper review segment. And in studio with us, we have political analyst Dismas Mukua and High Court Advocate Ndegwa Njiru. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Michelle.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now let's get right to it. And I want us to begin with this standard. Some very serious allegations have been fronted. And the headline here is how police lure victims to their death. And this is a report that continues from pages 10 through to 13. And let's take a look at that. So in a shocking confession by a whistleblower, it has been established that senior police officers are presiding over extrajudicial killings in the region with wanton disregard for human life whatsoever. Now, this, if we could have the pictures up, is a whistleblower by the name Tony, who, as we speak, authorities say might have been executed because he is missing. But this is information that he has given. Dismas, let's begin with you. I'm sure you've read this report. Tony has a list of men here that he says he was tricked by police to lure them into their deaths. He was paid 5,000 shillings to lure people into their deaths.
You know, when you go through that report, you begin to wonder whether Kenya is actually a nation, whether Kenya has got any respect for institutions, or whether or not we respect the rule of law and order. And this is really unacceptable. And if whatever this gentleman says actually is a true narration of what is happening, we're in a very horrible state. And then you begin to wonder, who are these cartels who've been allowed to run our system in such a reckless manner? How can a nation which has got a new constitution, which claims to respect the rule of law and order, allow a few mischievous policemen to engage in this manner of mischief? This is totally unacceptable. And when you read this story, at some stage you ask yourself, is this really the case? Or is it somebody who has sat down and done a fictional story? This is the kind of stuff that we use to produce movies. But that it's happening in real time and at a cost of only 5,000 bob. I mean, you'd expect the policemen in Kenya to respect law and order, but no, they're using mischief. And as if that's not enough, they engage in extrajudicial killing. So you begin to wonder, who gives the police authority to engage in extrajudicial killing? Don't we have systems and procedures? This is just appalling. And I suspect Ndego, being a lawyer, has got more information on this.
Absolutely. But Ndego, before you speak, you know, many times when we speak about issues like this, we say the police. We don't mention the names. But Tony did mention a few names. The whistleblower implicated the OCS of Nakuru Police Station, Bamfort Surwa, a former officer in charge of crime, as well as Paulo Molo, who is currently in the Kimilili Police Station as the masterminds of the work, saying they work with 5 junior police officers who do their casual, dirty work. So this is so orchestrated that police officers use people on the wrong side of the law, blackmail them to bring the target that they want to kill. But the very fact that police are killing, and we have about 5 people here who were killed by police for no reason whatsoever, as a lawyer, Ndego, how do we begin addressing this?
I think, Michelle, this nation has so many ailments. I may not be having the actual prescription, but I think the most important prescription is to abide by the rule of law. Remember, there was a comment that was made sometimes back before we went for 2013 elections, that choices have consequences. When that comment was made by that ambassador, we all thought that the consequences that we would face would probably come from international perspective of trade embargoes, maybe Kenya being declared a pariah state and all those. However, we never took it to consider that there are some consequences that we shall suffer as Kenyans because probably of the choices that we make or we shall make. And these are some of the consequences. And the consequences is a breakdown in the rule of law. The consequences is a breakdown in the spirit of constitutionalism. Because our constitution upholds the right to ownership of property. It upholds the right to life. It's actually inviolable. That is what the document says. But I keep on saying that Kenyans were so enthusiastic in giving themselves a new document, a new constitution. But the Kenyans were not ready to abide and implement the new document. We changed the law, but we never changed as we Kenyans. So we are having a new wine in an old skin. we are implementing a document that none of us is ready to implement. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because the document that we have is so elaborate and so progressive, but the people implementing it are so archaic, they are so rudimentary, we are actually a mediocre nation, I would say. Look at what happened the other day here in Westlands. Goons come, they demolish someone's house. The police is aware, they have been told. This family reported to the police that there are people threatening us. Nothing took place. The murder of Willie Kimani was actually done by the police. Remember, before we did our elections in 2013, there was the Eston report, the special rapporteur of the UN. It documented a very elaborate extrajudicial killings. But what happened? When the document was presented to government, nobody was bothered to do the investigations.
Right.
Why didn't I do the investigations? Why did government do the investigations? It's not my son who is dead. It's not my relative who is dead. I am not concerned. The person who is dead is inconsequential in the society, is meaningless in the society. It's only the families who knows the pain. So we are having that breakdown of the rule of law. And that is why you can see we are where we are. Look at the document. The document has created the institution of the IPOA, the Independent
Policing
Oversight Authority. A very well thought idea. Look at what happened. The document created the Kavulundi Commission. And the Kavulundi Commission undertook a very elaborate, what was being called police vetting. The question is, if there was this police vetting, why is the Standard having such kind of a headline today? Why is Kavulundi in office today? Why are Kenyans paying him if he's not able to weed out all these rogues? So I do not know, and I do not understand how Kenya can be where we are today. And I think we must start by getting a paradigm shift. Change of leadership itself is not enough. Because change of leadership, we change leadership and we bring the same leadership with the same mentality as it was.
Right.
The old skin. So to me, this news is very shocking. And this is only what is known. It's a tip of the iceberg. There is much more that is not known. If today you go to the police station, Michelle, even lawyers today, they are being threatened. You cannot represent a client in a police custody. Why? Because the police will threaten to arrest you allegedly for obstruction of justice. Yet an advocate is an instrumental organ and infrastructure in delivery of this justice.
Right.
So we must start and begin to have a national debate of the kind of the nation that we people want to have. It will not just occur by mere casting a vote. Look, when we went to court, and I believe we shall be coming to that when we come to the Star. When we put in place Chapter 6 of the Constitution, the Chapter 6 created a threshold of the leadership that Kenyans would want to have.
Right.
It created the leadership of the state officers and it's called the state officers, and the other one is what? The police fall under the different category of I remember, I'll tell you. So all these guys are supposed to be in consonant with Chapter 6. Whether you are a policeman serving at a police station in Kimilili, whether you are a police officer serving at a police station in Kimau, where Willie Kimani was killed, you must conform to the theme of the Constitution. And one of the themes is the respect of the rule of law, the respect of democracy, respect of human rights. You must conform to those things. But Kenyans, how shall we be able to get and weed out these police officers if the system has not created infrastructures for Kenyans to have an avenue?
Right. And the system is the issue. And I want us to speak more about the system, Dismas, because once again, there's loopholes being witnessed when it comes to witness protection. Just not very long ago, Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohamed had an interview with Al Jazeera protecting the government against allegations of extrajudicial killings. But her defense was that nobody had reported this to the government. Now, here's a whistleblower who has reported this to the government. And the CID is here saying this man cannot be found. he's likely to have been executed. We drafted a report that he should have been under witness protection with IPOA, but now he just cannot be traced. So is there incentive then to come and report such issues to the government?
Well, there's no incentive at all. And that goes back to the Kavuludi Commission. That commission was supposed to vet police officers and get the bad people out of the system. And if you go through their records and what they've done so far, one would easily come to the conclusion that in fact they've been successful failures. Because the only thing they're looking for right now, when they're looking at the policemen and they're doing their vetting, they're looking at their bank balances. They're looking at their M-Pesa balances. Instead of focusing on the core issue. The core issue was respect for the rule of law and order as a policeman. The issue was respect for human rights. But the Kavuludi Commission, all they want to do is look at bank transactions. And when they've got very solid evidence that majority of the policemen who are right now millionaires have not sold anything for a profit, they still do nothing. Because how do you explain that an ordinary traffic police officer manning a roadblock somewhere on Gong Road has transacted over 10 million in one financial year? How does that happen? Probably what we need to do is go to the Kiganjo Police Academy and get the curriculum to understand how one can easily become a millionaire and start motivating the Kenyan youth. Because it's really unacceptable that a policeman whose salary is well known does not has got a fortune and has no respect for human rights. Yes, the Kavuludi Commission is very silent on that particular issue because you've not had any drastic action coming from that commission, people being fired. And when you have Ambassador Amina Mohamed, who wants to head the Africa Union, saying that she's not aware of extrajudicial killing in Kenya, then you begin to wonder whether or not she actually lives in Kenya, whether she attends the cabinet meetings, whether she reads newspaper or watches TV locally. Because all this information has been reported. You've got so many civil society organizations working on this particular matter on extrajudicial killing. You even have a government agency working on extrajudicial killing. And these reports are made available to any living person in Kenya. This information is shared with the cabinet. The information is shared with the Minister for Internal Security. And one would expect that if you're attending a cabinet meeting, Major General Kaiseri should be presenting this information on a regular basis. And really assuming that as far as the cabinet is concerned, the Kenyan police is on the straight and narrow, that nothing happens as far as the cabinet is concerned. And maybe we're actually making an assumption that in fact the cabinet meets and considers that these are atrocities being committed against Kenyans. Right. But assuming that they don't do all this, does it mean that Ambassador Amina Mohamed does not go through the newspapers, does not watch TV, does not listen to radio to understand that there is extrajudicial killing? Taking the case of Willie Kimani, the lawyer who was, now we are told, killed by the policemen. There was even a demonstration in town. So why does Ambassador Mohamed leave not to appreciate this issue? And you see the way she handled that issue on international television, it was very casual and she lost her cool. And at this stage you begin to wonder, at that stage, was she aware that she was interested in running for an African position, or she thought that she was addressing the normal Kenyan audience that she appears to be condescending on? Right. And really it's bad manners for our leadership in Kenya to ignore the fact that there is extrajudicial killing. Because when President Kenyatta was sworn into office, he was given a ceremonial sword, he was given a Bible, and he was given the Constitution. When you're given a ceremonial sword, you are told to secure lives and properties of all Kenyans. There's nothing more important in Kenya than the lives of all Kenyans. But as Ndego has indicated, we live in a space where we operate like the animal farm. If you are a normal Wanjiro, you are a normal Onyango, and you are killed, there's no big deal. The only time that the nation begins to realize something is happening is when you are in high society, something has happened to you, and then the entire system wakes up. So really, right now, there's no incentive of going to the police station to report anything, because when you do, you are volunteering information, but immediately you become a suspect. For instance, if I witness a crime and I want to go to my local police station and report, I'm going to be kept there for hours on end. I'm going to be required to make appearances in court. That will be on a good day. But on the worst case scenario, I'll be thrown behind bars. I'll be named as an accomplice. So nobody is interested in working with the police. But in other more mature economies, where people respect, or rather where the policemen respect the citizenry, then citizens are very happy to work with the police. But in Kenya, it's an entirely different game field.
Right. And of course, this is something that Kenyans need to wake up to. A very comprehensive report from pages 10 and 11 titled Killer Officers, a report on extrajudicial killings, and we hope something can be done about this.
Don't hold your breath. Nothing is going to be done.
Unfortunately.
I mean, this is Kenya.
Unfortunately. But,
if there was something which was supposed to be done, it was from the time when Will Kimani was killed and the entire nation came to a standstill and the people protested. And one gives commendation to the chief magistrate at Milimani, who said, I'm going to take personal responsibility, personal charge, ordering the investigative agencies to appear before him and make solid presentations. But at this stage...
Justice Kimaru.
Yes. But at this stage now, it's... I mean, I think maybe, Michelle, we need to go back to the formation of the police service. When it was formed, rather the police force, initially it was meant to protect the settler community and the few rich Africans from what they would describe as the natives. And I think they have not reviewed their philosophy to date. The police service today see themselves as protecting the political leadership in Kenya and protecting people who are millionaires and billionaires. If you don't have money in Kenya and you're not in a political leadership, then you're on your own. For instance, how would you explain that a normal politician, maybe a cabinet secretary, has got about 20 policemen detailed for his security, and yet a police post in Mumias that was attacked a few days ago has got a total of 10 policemen manning a full police station. Yet, one cabinet secretary who stays, say, in Nairobi, has got 4 cops at his Nairobi home, has got 4 cops at his village home, has got another 4 cops as part of his escort. I think really what we need to do is to review that philosophy behind the police service.
Yeah, there's something I would want to comment on the issues of the police service. Vis-a-vis the new constitution. If you look at Article 1 of the new constitution, it provides that power belongs to the people. And because of the history that Kenyans had gone through since independence, with the brutality of the police force, because of that mentality of the settlers' ideology and philosophy, Kenyans came to a station whereby they wanted to reform the police force service. And there was a big debate whether it should be called, it should remain as police force or police service. And the reason why the name was changed from police force to Kenya Police National Police Service was because the Kenyans thought that aspect of the word force was actually giving the police an idea that they must implement and use force any time they are dealing with mwananchi. Another thing that happened during those reforms was that Kenyans said that police authority is subject to civilian. That the police authority is subject to civilian. But today, if you go to a police officer and is attempting to arrest you and you resist, he becomes very brutal. And you're not resisting because you do not want to be arrested. You're resisting because simply the procedures in which he's employing in arresting you are wrong. He has not even told you the reason you're being arrested. So many a time is that they use this force because of that ideology of the settlers. So what Kenyans must understand is that this police service is subject to the Kenyan civilian authority. So a police cannot be referring to you as raia. That alikuwa anataka kunishika mbele ya raia, alikuwa ananitusi mbele ya raia, alikuwa anaresist mbele ya raia. Because raia, which is mwananchi, is the one who is over the police authority. Is actually the police authority is subordinate to us. But Kenyans are not aware of this. Why? Because the nation has never invested in civic education. We are investing billions of shillings in the Northern Collector Tunnel. We're investing billions of shillings in Standard Gauge Railway. We're investing billions of shillings in these other units. But we cannot invest billions of shillings in synthesizing and informing mwananchi. Because the political class realizes that it's not easy to govern a well-informed mwananchi. In matter of fact, this idea of them saying that they are building project at the expense of Wanjiko's information is propagating what I'm keeping on calling the philosophy of politics of poverty. If we impoverish the mind, you'll also impoverish the pocket. Nobody will ever question you. For instance, And I want to just correlate this with other issues that have been happening in Kenya. Look, nobody knows what Article 26 or 226 of the Constitution says in respect to public finance. Yet, any Kenyan anywhere should and must understand what Article 226 says. It says about accountability, transparency, involvement of the people, participation, inclusivity of the people in issues of finance management. It also includes issues of equitable taxation. Look at you, Michelle, today. And I want just to address that issue of lack of information and civic education vis-a-vis this brutality of the police and what is happening in Kenya. Today, you are taxed as in pay as you earn. You pay as you earn. You are taxed so many other taxes. But when you go to a supermarket, you also taxed VAT. So here is Michelle, here is Dismas, here is Ndegwa, being taxed twice. Why? Because we do not know what the Constitution and what the law of taxation says. And it is the responsibility of government to make Mwananchi know. But again, it is the responsibility of government to make Mwananchi not to know so that they can easily govern us.
All right. And this is something I'd like us to come back to, but let's take a look at other stories that are making headlines. On page 8 of the Standard, KDF medics rescue patients at the Kenyatta National Hospital. So this is a different phase of the police force altogether. After doctors from the Kenyatta National Hospital joined the doctors' strike, KDF had to send their medics to the Kenyatta National Hospital to handle emergencies in the area. And so, of course, this is another big story in the country, the state of healthcare. We have been keeping tabs as KTN News on what is happening across the region. We have had reports of fatalities in hospitals where doctors aren't there. Dismas, this isn't new with the doctors. You know, are we likely to see an end to this?
Obviously, at some stage, there's going to be an end to this. The doctors will not be on strike for the next 20 years.
But are they going to be on strike again 3 years from now? Yeah,
but you see, the problem is, Michelle, that as a nation, we've got a firefighting approach to issues. The doctors have been on this for the longest time possible, from 1963 when we got independence. They've been saying that they're not sufficiently compensated for the kind of work they're doing. And I recall they gave a strike notice of about 4 weeks. So the government, the national government and county governments had the opportunity to sit down with the doctors and look at their demands. And they say that a CBA has already been signed. But what we saw happening is that the doctors just slept, or rather, the leadership slept on the job, and they waited for the last minute, and they were having nocturnal meetings. So one wonders, was this strike really some sort of an emergency that people are not prepared for? Didn't Dr. Mailu know that the doctors are going on a strike? And didn't the Council of Governors know that the doctors are going on strike? And you know, this points to one direction, that there is a mediocrity in the leadership. And the governors yesterday were accusing the national government that they have not given them sufficient resources to manage healthcare. Yet we know that healthcare is facing a number of challenges because the county governments on their own, they've made several mistakes. That if you're a medical doctor and you don't come from that particular neighborhood or that particular location, they're not going to give you a job. So there's a bit of, they've antagonized the medical doctors. But really, at the end of the day, still the buck in Kenya stops with President Kenyatta. He must come in and offer leadership. Because for poor Wanjiko, and you know, there was a kid, I think, in Kisumu who was about 4 days old, who has already died because of this strike. So for that poor mother, she doesn't care who is supposed to give leadership, whether it's President Kenyatta, whether it's the Council of Governors. For her, our worry is that my kid has died and somebody else is going to die. So instead of taking Kenya through all these motions, these people should sit down and give us a solution. And maybe we need to, in as much as today we are celebrating Fidel Castro, we need to look at the Cuban healthcare model and find out what can we borrow from Cuba. And Cuba has achieved a lot of success because they place a huge premium on preventative healthcare. That for them, their premium is, we want to be sure that you do not fall sick. But in the unlikely event that you fall sick, we give you good medical attention. But coming back to the medical doctors, the demands appear to be equally unreasonable. Because they're saying,
the 300% pay rise.
They want an entry-level doctor to be paid 300,000. That is unacceptable. That's obscene. And then one begins to wonder, how would somebody from the Kenyan government agree to that we are going to pay a medical doctor. In as much as you've been reading for 7 years, give us a break. People read for longer than that. But how would you tell people that you've just graduated from School of Medicine and you want to be paid 300,000?
Right.
You know, that will have an intended effect in the entire economy, because all other public servants would say, wait a minute, we've also spent, engineers spend about 5 years in school. Architects spend maybe 6 years. They'll say, we want to be given the same amount of money. So you wonder, when government was signing this CBA, were they doing it at gunpoint? Were they rational? How would they ever sign?
Right.
But again, the medical doctors in Kenya, in as much as they're giving us a very good service, they stand accused. Because on average, they're supposed to be spending about 50 hours a week in a public hospital. But how many of them actually spend even 5 hours a day in an hospital? They don't. What they do is they behave like members of the National Assembly. They make a technical appearance at the public facility at Kenyatta National Hospital or wherever they're working. And then across the road, they've opened their own private clinic. So actually, I think as Kenyans, we are not getting value for the money we even pay doctors today. And I think moving forward, if you had some clever people, as Donald Trump says, who are negotiating with the medical doctors, maybe they should be given 250 on one condition, that they are going to spend all their life at public hospitals. Because it's bad manners to give a medical doctor today a fortune, maybe entry level today about 125,000, yet they spend 2 hours a day in the public hospital where they're supposed to be working. All the time they're working in the private clinic. It's the same doctors who connive with pharmacists to steal drugs. If you go to an average hospital in Kenya today, there are no medical drugs, but you walk across to a pharmacist, you find government of Kenya drugs being sold. So I think even the doctors need to rise to the occasion and say, in as much as we are demanding a lot of money, we are not being fair to the citizens of Kenya.
All right. And very quickly, Nego, before we move on, there's been a lot of finger pointing, towards the doctors that as much as they want this pay rise, they shouldn't go as far as paralyzing health services as much as they have now. I mean, people have died in the past few days. What are your thoughts on that?
In my view, everything that you see happening, man has a tendency of being reactionary to circumstances. And I believe looking at what is happening in this nation vis-a-vis the recent almost being forgotten scandal of the Afya House, I believe this money was meant to cater for the medical field. And so they're saying that people are looting this money. And why am I connecting this? Because in their demonstrations and in their strike, they are saying, lipa kama tenda. They're even carrying the kaburas,
the gunny bags.
Right. So to me, the doctors are demonstrating that you guys are stealing money that is meant for us. This money was meant to pay us, but you are stealing it. You are allowing people to loot this money left, right, and center. So to me, it's a demonstration against the vices that are happening in government.
Right.
And most surprising is that I may then think that Kenyans are now on their own. Because we are now 8 months to the elections. Everybody is investing in anything that will bring political expediency in their group. Today, the whole of this week, the president has been engaged, and the deputy president, in very serious political engagements. Remember, they left Nairobi on Monday, and they left the doctors marching in the streets. They went to Kambani. Now the doctors are still marching. They are somewhere in Kericho. The only thing that can come from those podiums is praise. If we were in a democratic state, a civilized nation, the president would not have left the State House until this is done. Mailu would have started blowing the whistle that you guys, there's trouble coming. The first day they realized that they have not complied with what they had previously agreed with the doctors. So as much as we may also blame the doctors, even the government is at fault because of irresponsibility of government and the inability to become responsive to mwananchi. I've told you in police issue, if it is not my son, I'm not concerned.
Right.
If it is not if I am able to go to Nairobi hospital, I'll be able to fly for a blood clot to South Africa. I'll be able to go and get my baggage removed in South Africa. I don't care. I can still get these facilities. So again, Kenyans are on their own this thing. On this, again, Kenyans must believe and must understand they are on their own. Anything that is not going to bring political expediency for these guys, either in CORD or in Jubilee, nobody is going to give an ear to it.
All right, and let's of course hope that this will be solved soon, because a lot of people are suffering from this, but time is not on our side. Let's take a look at a bit of politics from page 4 of The Nation this time. And so 12 have been picked to head alliance talks for the National Super Alliance, and this is the manifesto, the opposition manifesto, of course, modeled after 2002's what is National Rainbow Alliance, which successfully managed to remove KANU from power. With these 12 experts, I mean, are we looking at a force to reckon with? They did release the strategy, not their strategy, the structure rather, the leadership structure. Are we likely to see this being cemented now as we head to the election?
Well, when you look at President Kenyatta's body language the last couple of days, he's started giving NASA unnecessary publicity.
Right.
Because when the president and his deputy start saying that Raila and Mudavadi are putting together an alliance which will not be successful in kicking us out of office, then the ordinary Wanjiku begins to wonder, why is the president nervous? Why is the president getting worried? And one sees from the body language of Raila Odinga as well as Musalia Mudavadi that NASA is something to watch. However, what we must do as Kenyans is to make a lot of noise and tell these people behind NASA that when you're forming NASA, it should have Wanjiku's interest being given a preferential treatment. Because all the time when these people come together and they're forming political formations, normally the interest is to serve their political appetite. They want to allocate positions to themselves instead of looking at Wanjiku's selfish interest. But again, when you look at the NASA formation, I think the biggest challenge is going to be the sycophants around Raila Odinga, sycophants around Musalia Mudavadi, around Kalonzo Musyoka, and around Wetangula. And when you look at, say, for instance, the sycophants around Raila Odinga, they know for a fact that if Raila Odinga is not in the ticket, the probability of securing an automatic win is almost zero. So for them, they'll be pushing that Raila must run because they want to have an easy win. The same will happen to Musalia Mudavadi, the same will happen to Kalonzo, the same will happen to Wetangula. And I think at some stage they must come to the realization that Kenya needs to move forward. If you want to have a strong candidate to take on President Kenyatta, then you must go in as a united opposition. If everybody is going to be driving on their own path, then we are going to fall into trouble. And maybe at this stage, one needs to congratulate President Kenyatta, because again, during his tour of Kericho and Northern Rift, he's introduced a new thinking. He's saying that at the next election is going to be anchored on the development agenda. He's now telling us that people need to start asking questions. How many kilometers of road have you built? What has been your development agenda? Which would be very interesting, because assuming that, say, Musalia, Wetangula, whoever is going to be the flag bearer for the Super Alliance, that person doesn't have a budget to come up with roads. So instead, we look at President Kenyatta. If he's telling us that from the time I took office, I've come up, say, with 100,000 kilometers, now the question would be, have we gotten a good return on investment on this money that you spent putting up a road? And now we'll start going to the mathematics. Because on average in Kenya, what is a sad situation is that if you're doing a normal road, a kilometer in Kenya would cost you about 100 million. While in Ghana, which has just had a change of guard, it will cost you about 25 million. In Ethiopia, it's about 50 million. So we'll begin to ask President Kenyatta and his deputy that when you're coming up with this road, how much money went to kickbacks? And was there respect for law and order? All these projects you've been coming up with. And I think NASA will have a walk in the park, because the president again has indicated that corruption is domiciled at his ministry, and all these projects have been vendor-driven. So we'll begin to wonder, when these projects are vendor-driven, who are the vendors? Were these vendors driving these projects in the interest of Wanjiku?
Right.
And it would be very interesting, and probably Ndego can confirm, that in his village, in Central Province, there's not been a monumental development project. So I'm expecting that people in Gatundu will look at President Kenyatta in the air and say, we elected you to office. What have you done for us? People in Rift Valley should look at Ruto and ask him, what have you done for us? And then on the same note, people should look at Musalia Mudavadi, should look at Raila, Wetangula, and Kalonzo and ask him, what have you done in the past to convince us that if we give you this opportunity, you're going to deliver for us. I think Kenya has gotten to a stage whereby people are beginning to engage the voice of reason. People are beginning to look at things from a structured manner. Because, you know, this idea of politicians lying to us every 5 years that they're going to put up a bridge for us, even when there's no need for a bridge, should be a chapter in history.
All right, right. Ndego, even as we talk about NASA, let's take a look at page 5. There's the rule that regulates campaign spending is facing major hurdles now. The deadline was yesterday, was it? And so we had hundreds of aspirants swamping IEBC headquarters in a bid to record their campaign finances and whatnot. But there's a stalemate now because the opposition does not seem to be in line with this rule, but President Uhuru Kenyatta seems to be complying with the campaign spending rule. So what's happening here?
Michelle, I keep on saying that this is the unpreparedness of this country and the failure of institutions to be responsive to their duty and their mandate.
Because they did have time to sit and discuss these issues.
Because all these reforms, we're expecting that they must have emanated, and they emanated from the demonstration that CORD brought about. And we also remember those demonstrations culminated into a committee that was chaired by Senator Kiraito Murongi and Senator Jimmy Orengo. And then I'm also thinking that in that process of removing the IBC, probably they were geared towards looking at the personality and the persons of the commission more than the regulations of the elections. And these are the things that should raise eyebrows, whether or not even the KEPSA meeting in Mombasa the other day had put into place reasons that might lead us not to having a credible elections and vis-a-vis a breach of peace, which the president confirmed and signed to. You can now see that there is serious disconnect between what Jubilee wants and what CORD wants. And these are the major players in Kenyan political arena.
Right.
So if there is going to be some disconnect and some bit of jittery between these two factors, you realize that then we shall move to the next stage of preparing for the elections while we still have this disconnect. And this disconnect brings much more of dispute of the credibility and the integrity and the fairness of the elections. And that will then culminate into what KEPSA was trying to arrest. In my view, all these things are being done for a purpose.
Right.
In politics, there's nothing that happens. Things are made to happen.
But just before you continue, don't you think, though, that opposition and members of parliament have a point because they're accusing IEBC of ambushing them with a law whose implementation has not yet been endorsed, and in their defense, the Act has no regulations yet to govern its implementation?
That's what I'm exactly saying. It looks like the commission is being battered by one factor of the political players. Because we must move to the next elections as a nation, not as Jubilee, not as CORD, as a nation. And that is why CORD is justified in questioning whatever the IBC is doing today. You know, if these guys meant well for this country, they would have first of all started by getting away the commissioners.
Right.
Because despite the fact that the Secretariat want to tell us that there is a difference between the Secretariat and the commissioners, all what we do know is the commission. The IEBC is what is called the commission. And the most important factor is the commissioner. Let me give an analogy with what happened with Ngilu's case, with the EICC. When she was arrested and she was charged in court, by then there was no commission. So she was the person who prepared all these investigations was the Secretariat. So the court said that she cannot stand a trial because there was no commission that was constituted. So the law looks at the commission much more than the Secretariat. And therefore, if we have disputes with the commission that is now preparing and trying to usher this country into next elections, then there is no way CORD can agree because they demonstrated to have these commissioners removed. And the first thing should have been, if anybody means well for this country, remove the commissioners, let's start moving to the next elections as a nation.
And of course, the very fact that policy issues like that cannot be done by the Secretariat without the new commissioners being sworn in. And so that's still ongoing.
Correct.
Yeah. And Dismas, I know you want to comment on that, but time really isn't on our side. Yeah. So even as you comment on that, let's take a look at the Star. And that's the front page, actually. And for the court cases of the candidates for the 2017 elections. And the report here is that many of them are battling court cases ranging from corruption to tax evasion to rape and assault. And the word is that they may be disqualified from running in 2017.
Let me make a comment before this must does, because I want to join my comments with what I was saying previously with the IEBC and the NASA thing. I remember I never commented on the NASA. I think it is a time the president and the deputy president wake up from their slumber and to the reality. Africa is in a move. We have had Gambia, where a sitting president was ousted by the opposition. Right. Yesterday, Ghana has taken over. And Ghana has always been seen as an epitome of change in Africa. Remember, when they got the independence, everybody started talking about Ghana. Everybody started talking about Kwame Nkrumah. Everybody, that is where they went for the case study. Look at what happened in Nigeria. Goodluck Jonathan was kicked out by Buhari. So let the deputy president and the president keep on thumping their chest. Why Buhari became the president was the same reasons that the opposition is propagating today. Coming to probably, and that should actually worry them, that Kenyans are also in a move and they are watching what is happening in other African nations. I think, again, we may not achieve much from what the Star is telling us. Right. Because remember, the Locus Clascus case, and one of the biggest case that put into test Chapter 6 was the Uhuru Ruto's Chapter 6 ICC case. But what happened is that the court at that time failed to appreciate and to uphold the integrity of the law and the fidelity of the law. What they said is, and that is what has always now, that's why we can never put these guys into account, that unless you exhaust all the mechanisms, you can run for any presidential or any seat. But when we came to the case of Waitito, when Waitito wanted to be the chairman of the Athi and Tana River Water Board, the court said, if you have any unquestionable and unfinished business insofar as your integrity is in issue, then you're not fit to hold public office. That was Waitito then, when he lost the governorship of Nairobi. And it is also the same Waitito who went to Kabete and ran for a political office. And won. So what I'm trying to draw is that when you're trying to get a job to sit in an office somewhere, the leadership and integrity chapter is so much dear to Kenyans. But when there is a political issue and a political movement that want to get you somewhere, we all forget about Chapter 6. So to me, unless a miracle happens in this country, that you also have a revolution of the judiciary, that the judiciary will not be there for political expediency. They will not give favorable findings to please few individuals and to be in consonant with the system. Then I am not surprised when these guys still be governors and still be members of parliament.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Ndegwa. So Dismas, very briefly, your closing remarks. We have so many cross-checks, even with ESCC, with IEBC. We have to make sure any commissioner, any candidate being interviewed has passed several checks. But when it comes to political seats, we don't do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, number one, going back to the IBC financing, the regulations are really ridiculous. Because right now, the only people that we know are going to run are the presidential candidates who will be nominated by the various political parties. The rest are aspirants, people who declared interest. And then what happens to public servants who are waiting to resign in February to run for political seats? Does it mean that this kind of regulation has already put a roadblock on their interest? And then coming back to these are Chapter 6 and integrity. I think the people like KEPSA, instead of calling people to go and start having conversations on elections in a manner that is leaning to Jubilee, we should look at our nation. How do we make sure that Chapter 6 works for us? And you know, we may not necessarily need to blame the judiciary, because the judiciary, we've been told, when they're implementing Chapter 6, the question would be, have you exhausted all the appeal mechanisms? And you know, in Kenya, we've got very mischievous people. If for some reason Ndego wants to run and he stands a very high chance of winning, the political competition may just bring up a matter, a civil case, or even a criminal case, which will serve the purpose of only stopping him because of mischievous interest. And I think it's important for us to follow that path. But however, the new Chief Justice Maraga should ensure that such kind of cases are heard and determined before the election, so that you go to office with clean people. And you know, it's often said that in the village, if there's a funeral, if there's a wedding, there are some people that you will never allow close to the treasury, close to the kitty. How do we allow these people to manage our CDF? And going back to the election for next year, I think it's important now for President Kenyatta and his deputy to tabulate for us the development agenda, or whatever they've done in the last pass, so that we can start questioning. And for NASA to tell us also what they've done in the past, which can convince us that if they're given office, they're going to work for the interest of Wanjiku. Because when today you visit the hospitals, people are dying today. If you visit the national park, there are no tourists. If you go to Mombasa, apart from the figures from Nairobi who are going for Christmas break, there's nothing happening. We need leaders who are sensitive to Wanjiku's selfish interest. Because if that doesn't happen, then you know we'll be talking till the cows come home.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Very incisive remarks. Dismas Mukua and Ndegwa Njiru speaking to us on what's in the papers this morning. Do grab your copies of the papers for those and more stories. We take a short break here on the Weekend Express. When we come back, though, for those of you who are fans of TED Talks, you might want to stay tuned. We'll be talking to the co-founder of Kenya's version of TED Talks.